Clinton getting publicly smacked down over a private email service. State Department watchdog says she broke rules. But the question is, did she break the law? Then Donald Trump keeps burning bridges. Will that come back to burn him when it comes to the general election? Also, our conversation with New York radio legend Brian Lehrer. Few people know City Hall better than he, and we're going to talk to him, among other things, about Bill de Blasio and the mayor's mounting problems and a lot more. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Thursday night. Now, we start with a double dose of good news for Donald Trump. AP says Trump has compiled enough delegates to clinch the GOP nomination. Not exactly breaking news, but nonetheless some finality. Plus, he looks on the other side, and Hillary Clinton keeps having problems with the email situation, and it is a story that will not go away. So that is putting a smile on the Donald's face. The State Department's Inspector General just issuing, I would have to say, a scathing report about her private email server when she was Secretary of State. It says Clinton violated department policy by using that private server and would have not been allowed to use it had, in fact, she asked. Now, on your screen now, some of the takeaways from the report. Using the server, never approved. Staffers were told to keep quiet about her using it. She wasn't surrendering all the emails in it, which also was a violation of policy, and there were concerns about hacking, and those concerns were never reported up the food chain. Now, the Clinton campaign released a statement about that report, reading in part as follows. Quote, contrary to the false theories advanced from some time now, the report notes that her use of personal email was known to officials within the department during her tenure, and that there is no evidence of any successful breach of the secretary's server. But this New York Times headline gets to the crux of the problem for Hillary, reading in part, emails add to Hillary's central problem, voters just don't trust her. Times is right, and the polls seem to validate it. Look at these numbers. 2/3 say that she is not honest or trustworthy. That's the bad news. The good, if you want to call it that, they also overwhelmingly don't trust Donald Trump. All right, let's bring in our panel right now. Richard Brodsky is a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos. I'll keep going. And a professor at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, had a fascinating conversation with Brian Lehrer today. Conservative strategist Bill OReilly, who's made some news throughout this season of his own. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, who's got to deal with all of them on a regular basis. Okay. Listen, I don't care how you say it. When you're above the fold in the Times here, and they call the report scathing, it's not good.
It's a mistake. She made a bad mistake.
But wait, time out. Let me give the context. We're 400 and some odd days into this story, a story that won't go away. She acknowledged that she made mistakes with caveat after caveat after caveat. Even today, the Clinton camp advancing that the Inspector General had some agenda here, that there were anti-Hillary forces within the State Department. Whether it's true or not, they certainly haven't made the story go away. And there were things that came out of this report that none of us had heard before, including that at one point, an aide went to Huma Abedin saying, listen, we're going to have to shut down confidential correspondence on this because not once but twice there were hacking attempts. To be fair, there's no evidence that it was successfully hacked, but nonetheless, the idea that it was never an issue.
It was stupid. It was wrong. It was a mistake. The question isn't that, it's the weight that's being given it.
Well, there's two questions. I'm going to talk to you now as Counselor Brodsky, okay? This was a tough report. It's a political report, and it's also an indictment on ways on our handling. However, the FBI in a couple weeks is going to take their pass, and they're going to talk to it. Is there anything criminal to this point?
Nothing in the report gives any basis for anything criminal. Now, that being said, this is like, to an extent, this is like a real Benghazi. Benghazi is a phony issue, and it's been pounded so often and so hard, people think there's something real there. There's something real here. Her judgment was bad. She ought to be held accountable for that. But that doesn't necessarily go to the fundamental questions that the race is going to be about. Nobody, I don't care if it's Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, goes into this perfect. It's a big mistake. She's paid a political price. That's appropriate. Now let's move on.
She's still paying the political price because it feeds into this whole suspicion that she's both not trustworthy, but also that somehow the Clintons are above the rules, and by using some slick language,
The slick Willie thing
definition
that
of
stuck to the
what
husband to
is
her.
is. I mean,
Do you believe her exposure at this point is strictly political and we can't measure it yet? Or do you agree with Richard, or do you think it goes further?
I agree with Richard. I think the damage to her is already baked in. I think unless there's an indictment, she's already paid the price that she's going to pay. I think people didn't, believe what she's been saying all along. I don't think that this increases the damage that much. I think it's already built into the equation. If an indictment came down, now that's a really big deal. But I don't think it hurts her much more than she was already hurt by it.
except I think it gives Trump more ammunition to keep calling her whatever he's calling her today, whether it's lying Hillary or cheating Hillary or whatever.
But you know what? I contend this is a bigger story than I've given it credit for to this point. Again, I think this comes down to judgment, not criminality. You still have to show me how she advanced, other than wanting to keep things quiet, which is wrong. I can still point to predecessors who did it, but just because all the other kids didn't doesn't make it right. And this idea that, hey, we're waiting by the phone to be asked to be participatory, they haven't played ball, by the way, with the Inspector General's office who was trying to do this. Apparently, repeatedly they asked and they weren't cooperative. Now, maybe a good attorney would tell you not to do that. My point, though, Dominic, is as bad as this is, any other general election opponent other than Trump, this is a bigger story. Yeah. But because he is so untrustworthy, because you don't know from one day to the next, and we'll get to it later on this program, anything he says is true, it's mitigated a little bit because you say, you look at this guy, he's the paragon of virtue. I contend that if it was Kasich who was a general election, this would be the biggest issue right now, because you could say, you know what, we'll disagree about politics, but me, if I tell you something, you can believe me. Trump can't say that, and I think it hurts.
But Trump wasn't the Secretary of State. Hillary Clinton was. Richard, I'm not going to say death by 1,000 cuts, but it's not good, and I agree with Andrew's assessment. It's just giving Trump's team ammunition, and they're going to use it. And it plays into the narrative, the story, as has been said. I understand, no criminality. Okay, fine. But it plays into the narrative of Slick Willie. You can't trust him or the wife. You can't trust either one of them.
But here's my point.
And it may cost her
the same
votes.
day we report this, we find out, Andrew, that accidentally some of the Trump team sent to a political reporter what they were thinking to the RNC, which is, give me all your talking points on Whitewater. They're trying to relitigate the 90s. Not a newsflash here, but my point, whether it's the email server or something else, every day he's trying to find something that he can turn into 2 sentences, because that's all he can remember and all he can know about some Clinton story. So this just replaced Whitewater for another few days. My point is, anybody else, this is a different story because they can talk, I think, with some merit on it. To him, I don't think it means as much. You disagree?
You know, I think first of all, I think she's doing the same thing to Trump. She's trying to dig up something new every single day, and we've been talking before about David Brock and the stuff that he's got on Donald Trump. So, I mean, but he does keep feeding the news cycle with these things, as he did all the way through the Republican primary process. So even if it is just a one-day story or a two-day story, I mean, it'll be part of his stump speech all the way through. So it's not going to go away. It's going to be a constant reminder and a constant drumbeat. And,
Richard, the 101 of politics is when you have a problem. We always say the cover up worse than the crime. I know there's not a crime here, but in this case, there seems to be something congenital that the Clintons can't just bite the bullet and address this and get it over. Even when she said she was sorry, to pretend that she said, I already said sorry, that was after how much time of banging the drum on
That's
it?
neither true nor fair. She did confront this early and say she had made a mistake.
No, I think that's revisions. She said she made a mistake long after it was brought up. She first said, this was protocol, everybody knew. She said that her predecessors all did. Then finally, when they kept banging on her, she changed her tune and said it was a mistake.
Let me rephrase it. Months ago, she said, I was wrong and I'm sorry.
Okay, but this is over a year old, this story.
The fact of the matter is, this is not going to go away. It's not trivial. It's not something you can shrug off, but it's something that reasonable people at some point are going to have to give reasonable weight to. And this stuff is all out of proportion, which is why Trump is moving it. In the end, if the polls are right, they don't trust Hillary and they don't trust Trump, then it doesn't matter because the race won't be decided.
Oh, I don't think it'll be decided on this either. Although I think for the first time, the people were talking about likability with her. They were talking about relatability. She was getting attacked from flanks. This spoke to credibility. And maybe people didn't trust her before, but this confirmed people that were looking for a reason to say, oh, you can't trust the Clintons. It lumped her in with
I think it's right. And by the way, I don't think that Benghazi is insignificant. I don't.
Phony.
I don't. The phony.
Six Republican
The phony thing was
committees have said
was
there was
blaming that on a video. I mean, that was really not right. That was disingenuous at the end of that last campaign. They blamed it on a video. That's coming up again. And
Look,
there's some real stuff there.
Let's take a look at this for a second. Benghazi wasn't a happy thing. It was filled with mistakes, and innocent people and American leaders died.
Right.
Mistakes but the notion that there was something profoundly wrong and dishonest about Hillary's actions
the cover-up.
There was no cover-up.
There was a cover-up. They blamed it on a video that had nothing to do with it. You know,
that's
coming up again.
First of all, it would have been nice from a Freedom of Information Act request to find out if she had been doing any emails that had anything about Benghazi in it. Right. So I think that's where these two are linked.
Nice work. Yeah.
Thank you very much. But beyond that, she's trying to position herself as the adult in this race. She's trying to present herself as the president on the stage when she winds up next to him. And this is the kind of thing that works against that. It's not just her likability or her trust factor. This is how we're going to run the country. You know, if her husband went through everything that he went through in the 90s, and granted he left in a popular position, well, this doesn't help her be the adult in comparison.
Okay, but that's the perfect segue. And I don't disagree with anything you said, except you have to look at the alternative. And when we talk about acting as the adult, you remember when Trump spoke about acting more presidential? This wasn't a year ago. This was a week or two ago. Well, apparently that was then and this is now. He is ramping up the personal attacks. And I'm going to show you from one speech, just yesterday, how he managed to insult more people and more groups of people than I thought humanly possible. That may play in the red states, but the question I have is, how the heck does that play anywhere else? Stay with us.